All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of the Bitcoin Bum podcast. I'm your host, Bitcoin Bum. Today's guest is a legend in Bitcoin Twitter space, Mind Over Matter. Most of you have probably heard of him. He's kind of all over the scene at the moment. I was introduced to him in the Will Clemente spaces that were semi-regular for at least a few weeks. I'm not sure I've seen them recently, but they were there for a little while. They were like an every night occurrence, and I kind of tuned in primarily because there was this dude, this complete anon. I think at the time he had maybe 300 or 400 followers tops, but was just in there dropping knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb. This guy was just like breaking down what was going on inside legacy finance to a degree that I had never really heard. So it was really fascinating to kind of get his insights from the traditional role of mainstream finance and really see how he thought through that lens related to Bitcoin. And as time has progressed, I've come to realize that not only is he an intelligent dude when it comes to finances and Bitcoin, but that the one principle, as that's the focus of this show, the one principle me and him seem to really kind of uh, have in common, I'll say, is that he seems like a disciplined guy. He's a gym guy. He is a 100% semen retention specialist until 100K. He, yeah, he's just doing his thing with discipline. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's guest, Mine. Thanks for coming on, man.
No, thanks for having me on, Kyle. Just getting to know you over the last month or so has been great. Just the incredible folks that are in this space, it kind of always astounds me, right? Not just on um, just the Bitcoin level, but just on every level kind of that we have with kind of the mind, body, and spirit building that me and you talk about, but the entire space talks about so much. So it's cool to kind of see other people kind of come together over some of these ideas, not just with Bitcoin, but kind of the downstream uh, cultural revolution that I think is a part of the monetary revolution as well. So yeah, it's been with kind of guys like you, just having a background in the military, having served, and you served overseas, correct?
I did, yeah, I did a year in Afghanistan as a combat medic.
So, right. So you've seen some real shit over there, obviously. So just kind of having that perspective too is just really cool for, you know, someone like me or just being in the space in general, because, you know, we talk about it a lot, but like everything that we do is kind of, it matters, right? Like I think of myself when I go through my life as kind of a soldier, and I tried to think, what am I going to do to win the day every day? And I've talked to you, and I know you feel the same way. So, yeah, I mean that's just kind of something I just believe in, is that like you win the day every day, and you have to win in every area, because if you fail in one area of life, then it's going to drag down everything else. You can't win like and fail in one area. So that's just kind of a big overarching principle. I know you and I have discussed this at least once or twice before. So
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, and I'm really interested to see where this conversation takes us because we do. I know when I asked you to come on the show, I kind of messaged you and let you know that like we see kind of the same big picture like outline for what should be kind of done and like the things that are required of individuals to kind of make this whole thing work, especially in the discipline of or in the principle of discipline. I think we just have some key differences in just like the in and this is honestly it's not just true of me and you, but I think it's true of just like the thing that is life in general, man. It's like there's 8 billion people on planet Earth, and each one of those 8 billion people is like living a unique life that's doing their own thing, and they have their own views on like how things should be done, what's important, and like what matters. And I guess for me and you, it's like we kind of, and I think this is true for Bitcoiners as well, is like there's a lot of overlapping like principles that like Bitcoiners have. And for us, discipline is one that we definitely agree upon. And I think there are just subtle differences um, in how you kind of go about the why. So yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how that plays out. But I'm curious with the idea of your discipline and your win the day, is this something that you found through Bitcoin, or that has just been hardened through your discovery of Bitcoin? Like, how did you find yourself in Bitcoin? And like, I guess, how would you say that discipline has played a role in your, I guess you want to call it, in your investments in Bitcoin?
Yeah, great question. So first off, um, I would say probably Bitcoin's accelerated it, but I haven't probably found any type of discipline through Bitcoin. I would just say it's kind of exacerbated it. But the just going back a little bit, like I came to Bitcoin in like June/July of 2017. I think so. Kind of prior, it was during the last bull run, but it was before kind of the mania phase. And but when I first discovered it, right, it was one of those things where I kind of viewed it more through the lens of gold, right? And I was like, oh yeah, this is going to kind of be digital gold. I think that's going to serve its purpose as this, and like I was buying a little bit in like the fall, and then of course I like FOMO bought the top a lot in like November and December of 2017, probably like a lot of people did. Never sold anything, still haven't to this day. But throughout most of 2018, I was buying a little bit, but had effectively kind of forgotten about it. Not forgotten about it, but just put it on the back burner. I was like, okay, like I know this is coming back. I don't know if it's gonna be in 4 years, 5 years, whenever. So I kind of actually just kind of backburnered it. Was reading about it throughout 2018 here and there, but I was kind of more focused on like online sales during that time period. So during the bear market, and this was a crucial mistake I made, was I did not buy down as much in late 2018, nearly as much as I should have. So I can tell by your reaction that like you've probably seen this before, but luckily I never
Yeah,
sold. But
yeah. I honestly, I said it, I think I might have said it on both of my first two episodes of my podcast, and it definitely is, I think, one of the most common recurring themes inside of Bitcoin is that every single Bitcoiner, I don't care who you are, every single one of them has somewhere, at least one place in their, like, their career, if you will, of being a Bitcoiner, where they have that place where it's like, I should have done this differently. Like, I could have done that one time period. Like, I messed up. We all have it. And you know what? It is what it is. Better to be here at all than to not be here at all. But for sure, I feel like every single Bitcoiner that I've had a conversation with has that period in their life where they're like, damn it, if for those couple months or for that year, if I had just done this a little differently, like, I'd be way better off.
totally, it's such a salient point, and you kind of learn through it all. And like you said, it's a good thing we're still here, because like a lot of people that bought at the top of 2017 sold, never got back in or something of that nature. So but just kind of going a little further, when I really got into it, and like I said, like I come from kind of like a libertarian anarchist kind of point of view anyway. So like when I heard about it, I think I first heard about it in like 2016, but just ignored it, and or just didn't dig much further into it. It was um almost like I wasn't one of these people that was kind of skeptical of it though at first. I know that's a lot of the stories for me, just because of my libertarian anarchist background. When I really got into it for the first time and started buying in the summer of 2017, I was like, yeah, this shit's legit. Like I read a book about like how they were using it in the Middle East, where for the unbanked. So I mean, like it lined up with my ideological thesis on how the world should work anyway. Um, but it like I don't think I fully understood it until 2019, and even more so 2020 is when I really understood it. And 2019, and we've talked about this before, was when kind of we had the repo markets, and the Fed had to backstop the liquidity in the repo markets in September that year. And throughout the second half of 2019 is kind of when I really started to dig into it more, um, just because of that. And then again, just like kind of when everyone else did, and then you saw I was like, by 2019, I was like DCA in, fairly regularly, and kind of a little even trying to buy in heavier in some spots. Then in 2020, right? we had the COVID crash, we have the $6 trillion in the money printing, and at that point, I realized, okay, like there's no kind of real alternative. The fiat monetary system is just fundamentally broken. So my my journey through Bitcoin's kind of been more of a realization throughout time. It wasn't like this single point inflection point that like a lot of people probably have. For me, it was kind of more of a throughout the course of how I'm still learning. So I mean, I'm 4 years in and I'm still learning. So I mean, it's kind of really truly been a process of diving in for me here.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't really speak for the entire Bitcoin community because I'm not the entire Bitcoin community, but as far as the process of like discovering that aha moment, I line up with you pretty closely. I think it was more of like a long drawn out kind of like I mean, it took several years. I was also introduced to it in 2016. It was about a 10-minute introduction from a cat I was going through yoga teacher training with, young kid, smart young kid, but like just kind of like knew about this magic internet money, right? And he kind of gave me a 10-minute rundown. It was enough where I was like, that's interesting. I kind of, as you said, like I lined up with my worldviews already. Like what I got from that 10-minute conversation was like, this is kind of in line with like the way I think things should work. So that's fascinating. But like that was it. And then like I kind of forgot about it. Maybe that was like late 2016, early 2017. I remember sitting around the kitchen table and I had heard enough of the buzz a little bit about the climb in price. It was floating around $500 a coin at the time. And I remember telling my mom and my stepdad at the kitchen table, I'm like, you guys should probably buy some of this. It's going to be the future. And they're like, well, how? Where? And I didn't have an answer. I literally had learned nothing more. I had just like heard whispers of this thing called Bitcoin, right? So didn't have an answer, wasn't able to help them, didn't have any money myself. Just that was the end of that. And then my life kind of took a giant turn and I found myself in a van driving from my hometown in Pennsylvania out to California. By the end of 2017, kind of towards that mania phase you're talking about, this is when I was like having some deeper dives down the Bitcoin rabbit hole with one of my professors at university out in San Francisco. That was kind of like the first real world location where like the conversation started to get a little more in depth. And that's kind of how it played out for me from 2016 all the way through until where I bought my first corn. And that was 2020. For me, the kind of moment of like, man, I should have done this different was like when the March crash happened. I had learned enough from 5 years of travel around the world and kind of like random conversations, like the one with my friend, the one with my professor in San Francisco, the one with the guy in South Africa, the one on the stairs in front of a hostel in Romania with a finance guy who was at the time preparing to like move to Poland. All of these conversations just kept increasing my like understanding of what this thing was and why it was kind of inevitable. And then the crash happened, and the crash, I was just like sitting around watching all my friends like open Fidelity accounts and Robinhood accounts, and everybody's starting to like day trade and swing trade. And I'm like, guys, buy Bitcoin. Like, I don't know everything there is to know, but I know that this is the exact moment that this thing was built for. Like, you should buy Bitcoin, like right now, buy as much of it as you can. And no one listened to me. And for good reason, because honestly, when it comes to discipline, this is the moment that I failed. And like I will forever look back at like this couple of month span as my failure in Bitcoin, where I was like telling everybody to buy it, but I was in the process of building this truck, and all of my like fiat income that was just like being pumped at me from the government was going into getting my house built. And in hindsight, I like should have thrown the mattress on the floor and just like drank water bottles and ate ramen, because I'd probably have like, I don't know, 10x the Bitcoin I have today if I had just been buying with all of that money when I was telling my friends to buy some. Yeah, it's a process. I'm also still learning, but that's for me, that was the moment. The crash, the pandemic, like being on the road for 18 months, I just like literally spent all of my time diving down the rabbit hole, and it seems to be pretty endless. So like as far as discipline is concerned, like I still have a lot of energy to invest in this space. Like it feels like there's still a lot left to do.
Yeah, Kyle, that's such a good point that kind of everybody has that moment. And there's the saying that like eventually kind of Bitcoin humbles everybody. And, for me, it was that moment I kind of passed up when it was 3K in 2019. And I knew about it, because I'd already been in it for a year and a half. And for whatever reason, I was trying to, I don't know what I was doing, but yeah, I think Bitcoin has its way of humbling everybody, and so to this day, I look back and, you can't change the past, but what you got to do with that is figure out what was your mindset then, what was your thought patterns then, and what if a similar opportunity comes up or something similar happens in the future, how are you going to approach it? And that's kind of been um, my approach to all this is just kind of see how you can take it moving forward.
Yeah, it's a good question. And honestly, in this very moment, I don't know I have a good answer for what I would do if I saw Bitcoin at $3,400 again. Like, I have far too little dry powder for that moment. I probably the first thing I'd do is cry at just the sheer magnitude of the missed opportunity.
Right. No kidding. And I don't think we'll see it back there, but
Yeah,
the point's taken well, because it's like, hindsight's 2020, right? We all kind of can see it, when it's going back, but when it's going forward, it's a lot more difficult. And to have that kind of discipline in the time, and that's what me and you have talked about before, right? You have to train your body and your mind in such a way that you know what the right thing is to execute. Like in early 2019, and I bought like some nominal amount back then, like, but like it was not near as much as I could have. I knew that what the right thing to do was, and to kind of scoop it up way more, but mentally, I wasn't strong enough to do it, right? So that's the thing is like, um, well, now I would be, because just I think I've kind of integrated the um, my knowledge of the protocol with kind of all of my decade plus of kind of physical, mental, and spiritual training. So now I finally would, because I've kind of synthesized those two things um, in such a way that I would be able to execute on that now. But
so with that in mind, I'm curious because you said kind of in your early days you saw it as gold 2.0, and that's kind of you were just buying a little bit of it to hedge. Now you're saying you don't fully understand it, as you've also stated, but you like have enough understanding of the protocol and what it is that you would take a more disciplined approach to it this time around, and are actively taking a more disciplined approach to it this time around. So I'm curious if gold 2.0 is kind of where you saw it back then, where do you see it today? Like, how does Bitcoin fit into the ethos that is like a disciplined life, and what does that mean for you now?
yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to just address it first as where I see it in terms of like um, from a monetary aspect, and then kind of the broader ethos. From just the monetary aspect, I see it being kind of the equivalent of the entire bond market. I think it's going to replace kind of the credit market in terms of store values. So, and depending on where you source that from, that's 150 to 300 trillion dollars in value. So, I expect it to be into kind of today's USD terms between um, you know 5 to $15 million a coin by the end of the decade, probably. And now it could be way higher than that nominally if they just keep printing right. So it could be
Right.
at like
Adjusted for
100 million.
inflation, you're talking about today's value understood at between 5 and 15 million.
Right. So the way the purchasing power of let's say 5 million today or 10 million today, that would be where I see Bitcoin's purchasing power by the end of this decade. As far as the second part of the question goes, with the kind of the broader ethos, you know, to me, it's you have sound money and all of the other cultural aspects of sound money fall into place as a result of that. So you have sound money, you have more prosperous families. You have just like the degeneracy and all of this that's seeped into the culture the last, especially 40 or 50 years under, this kind of peak fiat monetary system will no longer be there. It's not going to happen overnight, and it won't happen next month or next year. But as we slowly transition to a hard money standard, it's going to create, harder people, right? It's going to create people that are more likely to engage in high or low time preference behaviors. And the to me the biggest thing that, besides obviously the money breaking, is the breakdown of the nuclear family. That's been the biggest thing that has kind of, to me, ruined the West the past 50 or so years. Strong cultures start with strong families, in my opinion. So I think we'll see kind of a resurgence of kind of the strong nuclear family going forward, and a lot of this will be stuff that like our generation won't realize, because I think you said you're 32, I'm 31, so a lot of it will be for the next generation that's really going to probably see some of that stuff. So we're a lot of the work we're doing will probably be fruits that the next generation and even the generation after that's going to more bear. But it's worth it to fix that for them, if not for us. Maybe it happens quicker and we'll get to bear some of these fruits too, but it'll definitely happen for like Gen Z and the generation after. That they'll be able to grow up, or at least come into adulthood on a sound monetary standard.
Yeah, I think that idea of low time preference being one of the things that is kind of fundamental about what Bitcoin does to change the way you view the world is that I understand that there's a very strong likelihood that like the most consequential benefits of what Bitcoin is going to do for the world, I might not see. I mean, maybe I will if like medicine and science advances fast enough where like my physical body has the same limitations as my spiritual body, which is near zero. And like that's an entirely possible scenario. So I'm not downplaying it. But I understand that even if it isn't, it's like when we come back to that idea of discipline, right? Like discipline is like every day it's making a very small conscious effort to make today a little bit better than yesterday. And like I don't need to wake up tomorrow with like Thanos glove and just like snap the world into some like magically perfect place the way I envision it. It's like if I want to make the world that magically better place, then like what I should do is figure out what it is I envision out there, and I should just make that today. Like whatever I can do today to make the world a little bit more like what I think it should be like, that's how we get there. And like the more people that do that, the faster we get there. So that's one of the powerful network effects of Bitcoin, and why I'm optimistic that we will see some of these changes within our lifetime. But it's irrelevant because like honestly, if I can wake up every day and contribute to the space a little bit more than I did yesterday, if I can contribute to this goal of like making today better than yesterday for me and then for those around me, mission accomplished. So yeah, I don't know. It's a fascinating time to be alive because Bitcoin, I mean, listen, I honestly was a Bitcoiner before I found Bitcoin. It's strange because for me, Bitcoin's monetary effect, like the fact that it acts as a money, is only a secondary notion for me. Like for me, Bitcoin actually I said this at the end of my last podcast. For me, the fact that Bitcoin acts as a money is a third layer on the totem of what matters for Bitcoin. For me, the way I'm kind of viewing Bitcoin today is that Bitcoin is a lens in which humanity can view the world. It's a set of principles that humanity can use to like make the world a better place. The second layer on that totem is that it's then a network that connects all of us so that we can more effectively together move towards those goals. And then the third layer on the totem is it just happens to also act as a cool magic internet money. So that's really the kind of conviction I have with Bitcoin is Bitcoin. And listen, people have called it a religion. Have you heard of our Lord and Savior Satoshi Nakamoto? But like all jokes aside, it is a bigger thing than just a money network. It's literally a way in which humanity can better itself. And that makes me super bullish.
Yeah, Kyle, I think you hit the nail on the head there with that, because I also view it as kind of a human nature experiment, and money is just the layer through which that human nature or that human nature experiment is kind of being revealed. So that's kind of how the lens I view it through, and what the the monetary network is the medium for that, but it's fundamentally not the base layer. To me, the base layer goes deeper because it's a metaphysical level. So yeah, I completely agree with that 100%.
So with that in mind, like what is it that you would say, like with that bigger picture in mind, and then through the lens of the principle we're talking about today, discipline, like how do you find yourself each and every day? Like where do you see yourself kind of contributing more to the space right now than just buy and hold? Like what's your maximum conviction level? Like what is it you're looking to do? What is it you'd like to see come from your efforts towards the development of the Bitcoin space overall?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so for me, I've been in the space for 4 years. You know, especially the last two, where I've been kind of way more actively in the space than the prior two. But during the time that I've kind of been more active in the space, one of the things that I try to say is that it's not just a monetary revolution, right? It's a complete cultural revolution. So besides just buying and holding, one of the places that I actually originated from is kind of the self improvement space. So before I was heavily involved in Bitcoin, I was in the self improvement space, and a lot of the ideas in the self improvement space are now actually making their way into the mainstream. Funny enough, like New York Times had an article about kind of the chemicals in the water and stuff that we were talking about on self improvement Twitter, literally in 2016. So for me, that's kind of my specialty, because there's just guys in the space that I'm not a computer science guy at all, right? Like I've learned enough through kind of the protocol, but that's not my specialty. What I do think I'm pretty good at, though, is kind of body, mind, and spirit building. And because I've been lifting weights for training for probably 13, 14 years, since my senior year of high school. um I'm training my mind every day through kind of uh the physical realm. So yeah, I mean, for me, and I've had people reach out to me about this, and it's always usually goes back to something I learned in the self improvement space, because that's ultimately my forte. Like I understand like bond math and stuff of that nature, and I can break down why Bitcoin's a better store of value. But I mean, there's probably a couple guys out there that understand bond math better than me. I mean, I understand it pretty well, but there's guys that understand it better than me. One place where I do think I might have kind of a unique advantage over at least most people is just the body, mind, and spirit building, just because there is some definite fusion between kind of the Bitcoin space and the self improvement space, but it seems like it's still fairly tertiary and tangential. Whereas I think that's, for me, is bringing that into the space. So that I would say bringing kind of the broader self improvement ethos into the space is kind of where I've at least had the most positive feedback in like my DMs, or like just talking to people, whether it be through Twitter, through the spaces, things of that nature. I can be most helpful, and I think I have, and me and you have talked about this, because I think we have pretty much the same idea about this. That like every day you wake up, and obviously I don't I train like 4 to 5 days a week, but like on days when I'm supposed to train, I get up and I train every day, and I hit it every day, and I need to be 1% better than I was. And now obviously me and you have been lifting weights for a long time, right? We know that you had a genetic potential at some point and you can't beat that. So you try something else to beat yourself in some other way, because eventually, right, like you hit a genetic plateau. So how are you going to improve in some other way? You still got to stay in the weight room and do all that stuff, but find another way, because there are kind of just genetic limitations that exist in the physical realm that they don't exist in the mental realm.
So yeah, it's an interesting concept, because I agree with the idea that there's a peak physical conditioning that you're only able to train so hard, you're only able to reach so much capability before the limitation does just exist in the realm of the physical. There's only so much your body's going to be capable of doing. You're only going to be able to lift so much. You're only going to be able to push through for so long. You need food, you need water, you can't survive without air. All of these things are very real limitations, and there's no way around them. Where I think some of the interesting kind of dynamic shifts for like how me and you tend to view the realm beyond that, is I've heard you use the word mental a couple of times now, and I believe mental discipline is also a very valuable tool. Like I love to read books. I enjoy, when it comes to Bitcoin, I try to consume as much content as I possibly can, whether it be YouTube, podcasts, whatever that may be. So for me, that's kind of like the mental training aspect of things. And then I've heard you touch on it, but I haven't heard your kind of viewpoint on the development that is the more spiritual side of things. So you've got body, mind, and spirit. I'm curious, what are your kind of views on how spirit plays a role in your life and your kind of understanding of Bitcoin, and how do you go about training that part?
That's a great question. And I like how you led into that with kind of the initial questions. And for me, I consider myself a Christian, but I'm not like one of these people that goes to church every Sunday and does all that. I I do think broadly that when I kind of integrate the the spiritual aspect, it has to be through those first two realms, right? So you train the spirit by training your body and by training your mind to push through everything, and then you integrate the spirit. And kind of the way I do that, just personally, is every day, when I wake up, I find something about myself that I just can't stand, something I hate. And everyone's got something like that, because if you don't, then that means you're exactly where you want to be in life. And most people aren't. Like, I'm not where I want to be in life. I know a lot of other people aren't. So what, but to get better at that,
Can I stop you real quick?
go ahead.
Because this is kind of the exact tweet that you put out where I first noticed like a significant difference, and maybe it's not as big a difference as I think, because this is where, like, when you start talking about subjects or things of this nature, words are not always interpreted properly, like, because words kind of fail to encompass the depth at which some of these topics actually strive to reach. But for me, there's one word in there in what you said that I call everyone out on. I called my grandma out on it. I call my family out on it. I every time I hear it, I try to make a subtle little injection where it's like hate. It's a very strong word. For me, hatred is an absolute absence of love. So I've lived inside of hatred for years of my life after Afghanistan. Like, when I got back from Afghanistan, it was basically several years of like 7 nights a week, unbelievable alcoholism, crazy roid rage, just 6 hours a day in the gym. I was literally killing myself, and I was doing it because I was essentially, spiritually, I was unwilling to acknowledge the thoughts and the physical things that my body and my mind did while I was in Afghanistan. And I was kind of holding on to this past where it was like, these are the things I've said, these are the things I've thought, these are the things I've done. I can't possibly be forgiven for that. So I hated, and I hated the Afghans. I hated war. I hated everything. I hated me. So hatred, although just a word, and honestly in the United States of America, a word that's thrown around very casually, very often, I find this need to kind of interject a distinction between hatred and like a strong dislike. I think it's fine to wake up every day and find that you have a strong dislike about something about you, but to hate something about you, it doesn't work for me, because to really better yourself, you can't be in a place of no love. Like you have to like understand that I don't like this thing about me, but then I have to love myself enough to go and do something about it.
Totally. And it's a good distinction you brought up, because um when, like, if just speaking of your situation, if you got to a place of hate that led you to kind of alcoholism and things like that, obviously that's, you know, the exact opposite of what we'd want. What the realm through which I view it is that, like, I have to be disgusted enough with myself every day to want to get in the gym and train to improve on, whether it be like for instance, I want to learn Spanish now, and but like I've got to just be disgusted with the fact that I'm not bilingual until I am. Like, so maybe hate's not the right word. I'll reframe it a little bit and say I need to be disgusted enough with at least an aspect of myself to want to improve it so bad that I can't look at myself if I don't fix that. Like so like when and like you said, hate's probably not the best word for it, but maybe disgusted is a better word. I need to be
Yeah,
disgusted.
and I
Go
know
ahead.
it's again, it's one of those things where, like, especially the first time I bring it up in a conversation with somebody who just like is kind of using it as a word, and it's like I understand that to an extent you probably didn't have in mind the kind of same level of like of meaning for hate as like what I kind of view hate as, but I think in in a world of discipline, I genuinely believe, so I kind of understand and pick up on little nuggets of wisdom from throughout all kinds of religions. I would say the religion, if you will, that I most closely orient to, as far as where I've gained a lot of like kind of my understanding of the world around me, is Buddhism. And there's a Buddhist philosophy that goes, what, like, thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become deeds, and deeds become destiny. So I think taking it all the way back, like if it goes even further back than words, like if words is already the second layer, like to throw around a word like hatred, like you've started in the mind with this idea of hatred, and then it becomes word, and then it becomes deed, and then destiny. And like that's, it's not a destiny I want for myself or for the world. And that's why I think the subtle distinction, albeit again, I understand that's probably not what you meant. I think it's important to talk about, because if we're trying to be a disciplined individual, then to like make the world a better place, I have to be absolutely conscious about my thoughts and my words.
Totally. That's a good point, and there is a subtle distinction there that I think when I say hate, what the I do mean disgusted. I'll stick to the guns on that one, because I do mean you have to be disgusted, but I think that the subtle distinction is important between not using hate versus disgusted there. So I'll still stick to 99% of the premise, and that's like every day you wake up, and unless you're where you want to be, you should be disgusted with yourself. Like I mean, like I look in the mirror and there's something about me every day that I'm like, okay, I gotta fix this. So like what am I doing to get there? And it might not fix tomorrow or in a week or even a month, but I've got to be doing something to push as far as much as I possibly can to beat that, to just beat that shit out of me. And
Yeah.
until I've done that, then like I've not won. And internally we know it. We know if we have not given it 110% that day, 120%, like the maximum amount you can give it, that your body knows it. And that's when you start to, you know, second guess yourself and things of that nature. The When you're giving 100% every day, actually 100%, none of those thoughts even enter your realm, because all you're thinking about is how to get to that next phase, that next level. And every day, like as soon as you get satisfied with anything, and you said you're mainly kind of come from the Buddhist school of thought. Well, you know, across every religion, one of the primary themes is pride comes before the fall. So as soon as you thought, like any one of us has thought we've made it, is as soon as the fall comes, right? So every day I train like I'm at zero. Like it's like I'm 135 pounds again. It's my first day lifting weights, because as soon as I don't train like that, I'm gonna fall off. And if I stop training like that mentally, if I stop training like that when with relationships, with any realm of life, then I'm going to fall off. And that doesn't mean I succeed 100%. I don't. But I need to at least have the mindset that every day I go in, I am going, like, I believe that I need to, I'm a soldier, right? And I need to win that day. Like in the toughest battles that you probably ever fought, you had to have that mentality that every day you're fighting for your life. Well, you probably apply that to your life today, right? Maybe not in the same way, obviously, because you said, you know, you don't want that like hate to kind of manifest through yourself, but you have to, like, every day that you fight, you have to fight as a soldier. And it doesn't have to be in the battlefields of Afghanistan or Iraq, but when you're doing little stuff, if you want to win, you got to fight like a soldier. And that's my opinion. Obviously, you know, there's nuance to it too, right? Because you don't want, it can turn destructive potentially if it's like, you know, alcoholism and things of that nature. So there is definitely nuance there. And I think that's where you make a really good subtle distinction for not using hate, because it can lead to bad things if you really internalize the hate in a bad way.
So I guess another thing, another small theme on where I've noticed at least a degree of difference in the way we view things is that um is like, so for me personally, I have this understanding. It's not even an understanding. It's a being, right? I just know, and it has nothing to do with the mind. It's not a knowing through the mind. Like my brain doesn't make me know it. It's like I just physically understand that today is a thing for the physical realm, for this body and this mind. I have today and today only. For my being, I have forever. So I don't, it gets a little kind of metaphysical and a little bit trippy when you start trying to get down some of these deeper philosophical rabbit holes, spiritual rabbit holes, if you will. But like, I believe what I am is what you are, and I see no distinction between the two. Like me and you are, I mean, external science is starting to come around to some of these ancient truths as well, which is that like the entire universe, if you will, is one singular vibration. If you start looking into kind of like quantum, it's all a singular vibration that makes that ceiling and these headphones and my physical being and the brain and you and everything else is all from that vibration. I kind of always quote it as, from the one appear the many, but the many are the one. And with that spiritual knowledge, it's like I wake up every day. For a while, people used to be like, when I would talk about like, oh, like be here now, and like there's no other place to be, like that idea of being better today than yesterday, or working to make better tomorrow. If you look at it too kind of like quasi hippie, where it's like, well, okay, you're saying be here now, like presence is all, and like why not just like sit down on a couch and meditate forever, and like everything will just pan out. And like it's not what I mean, and it's not how it works. But like there's a degree to which I know that this physical body is the vehicle that I use, the greater I, right? It's the vehicle that I use to experience myself, if you will. Like if me and you are the same vibration, manifest into different physical like pieces of the same thing, then this is the vehicle through which I experience I. And through that, I this I think comes back again to the idea of like of the important distinction between hatred, because I shouldn't hate, because what I am is love. Like what I am is the magical energy that makes everything. And there can't be a better word that I mean, God, maybe like God, love. There's a few words that try to sum up the idea I'm discussing here, right? But I think once you have that understanding that you have forever, what you are is eternal, and that this physical thing is what's temporary, then it becomes a slight distinction in the idea of like how important some things are for what matters in your life. I think this also comes back to Bitcoin when you start talking about lower time preference. It's like I have this understanding that I have forever, so I don't have to rush. Like if like I got some little chicken legs compared to my upper body, right? I had like several years of abuse in the military. I had a lot of injuries, and like I'm only just starting to get back into uh, kind of equalizing my body physically from the lower half and the upper half. I, like you, wake up every day and understand that I would like to improve that. But I think where you and I slightly differ is that I guess to a degree, I understand what you mean by like I'm disgusted by, because I know I'm not happy with my lower body not being on par with my upper body. I know that I can put in more effort today to make my lower body more physically able like my upper body. But I also always have that understanding of like it's a physical thing that at the end of the day isn't super important. It's like what is important, at least for me, is like love, trying to figure out what it is we're all doing here, community, things that are prevalent in Bitcoin that I appreciate Bitcoin for. And like I don't know, I'm getting a little off track here, but did any of that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get what you're getting at here. I mean, the you're not going to get to the end of your life and realize you squatted 600 pounds, so you win some prize. No one's going to get there by doing that. So that shouldn't necessarily be a priority. Or at least the number one, right? When I talk about being disgusted with it, I talk about it kind of more holistically, and so the gym's kind of a part of that, and there's you know pieces of going to the gym that I see that through, but it's also not just that for me. It's so I'll make the distinction when I say that it's you have to like prioritize some things, and you can't necessarily prioritize everything at once. So when I try to kind of look through the lens of self-improvement here, and I always try to say get better at one thing first, right? Like crush it in one area, and then while you're crushing that one area, maintain the other areas, right? So I haven't focused that like incredibly hard on the gym in probably 7 years. I still go in there and train hard every day, but I reached my kind of physical potential when I was 24 years old, and I realized that the only way to get bigger would have been to go on steroids, and I chose not to do that. But like, not to say that there's anything wrong with people that do, but just saying like that's not the route I chose. And like I said, like a lot of people I trained with ended up doing that, and they ended up well surpassing me, and things like that. So definitely don't have anything like against it. I chose not to, just for a few reasons, like fertility reasons and stuff like that I've read, but again, nothing against it. When I say that, like I say you train the shit out of one area of your life and then maintain everything else. So right now, like with my kind of health and stuff, that's just a maintenance area. Right now uh, I'm trying to train everything else because I think there's three key realms of life, and it's kind of health, wealth, and relationships. And really, and the reason I say those three is also because if you look at like kind of the online marketing space, those are kind of the three places where there's you market to, and I've been in e-commerce before, so I kind of had that idea too. So when you train one of those areas, you want to maintain the other two, and then level up in that one area, maintain the other two. But yeah, like I hear what you're saying. What you're saying is like you don't want to go into the gym, prioritize just doing legs when you could be doing stuff like building community, um, getting getting your money up, like other things that are important. So yeah, I totally get that, and I'm with you there. I would just say that whatever you do it 100% or not at all, right? Like, so when you're, it doesn't have to be you're going in the gym like that. You can go in the gym and maintain, but whatever it is that you're prioritizing right now, you pursue that shit with reckless abandon. You don't let anybody stop you from that shit. And like every single day, you got to put everything you have into whatever it is you want to prioritize for that day. So it doesn't have to be weightlifting. It doesn't have to be this, but that's all it has to be. Is whatever you're doing for that day, you put 100% into that, and you don't let anyone take that from you.
Yeah, no, I honestly, very well said. I agree with that pretty much 100%. I find that one of the things I find very important for me as far as a disciplined routine is that same concept. It's like I have found it nearly impossible to be an effective individual if I have no priorities. Like if everything is important, then actually nothing is important. And I think this is a lot of the kind of Bitcoin Twitter, like what I would find really powerful about the space at large is a lot of people understand that is that like there's this kind of subset of people, and especially in Western culture, that have been kind of like pushed this narrative of everything's broken. And like don't get me wrong, lots of things are broken, but everything is broken, and you should focus on all of those things. Like racism is bad, and sexism is bad, and trans attacks are bad, and poor people aren't making enough money, and the homeless, and a war in Syria, and the poor people in Africa who don't have water, and it just goes on and on and on and on, and nobody actually prioritizes any of them. Therefore, they do absolutely nothing to actually help improve anything. And I think that's it's an important distinction in a disciplined life to understand that like you need to know what the very next most important thing is, and then you just need to crush that. Like if the next thing I have, like actually factually, when we're done here, I'm going to the gym. So like the next most important thing for me after this podcast is going to be the gym. I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to go 100% at the gym. And then like when that's done, like the next most important thing is going to be a shower, and like I'm going to go 100% at the shower. Like I'm going to soap my pits, hit my balls, you know what I mean? Like and and that's just like I'm not focused on anything else. This I think is where it's important to have that discipline of the mind, to train the mind, right? Because the mind can be a very powerful tool if you know how to use it when you want to use it, and not let it control you. Because if the mind isn't disciplined, then the mind can be a very powerful weapon against yourself. If I know that the next thing I want to do is go to the gym, then I'm going to attack gym at 100%. But if I'm like that person whose mind is undisciplined, and like I turn off this podcast and I turn around and I'm like, I got 3 dishes in the sink, maybe I should do the dishes, and holy crap, my floors look a little dirty, and like I actually don't know if I want to drive to the gym, and it's kind of getting late, and my insurance is up, and like just your mind is just constantly bombarding some people with like this idea like of just everything's important, and everything that you're thinking is important. And it's like not enough human beings know how to turn that off and just pick one thing, and then like you said, go 100% at it. Like and it is important. If you can't prioritize things in your life, then things prioritize your life for you.
Yeah, totally. and it's such a good point because the news tells us to care about all these things, that they're all psyops that either are just fake or we can't fix them anyway. So the only thing that you know me or you need to focus on first is ourselves, because
Absolutely.
if we're not at 100% good place, there's no way we can help anybody else. So like you have to have all your ducks in a row before you go out and try to fix anything else. So like everything that you or I do or anybody else should be focused on fixing ourselves, being 100% ourselves first, and then you can kind of go out, help your family, help your immediate community, and things of that nature. That's how you change the world, by just being the best you can be every single day, and being the best for everyone around you every single day. And
100%.
ultimately, that's what we need to worry about, is fixing ourselves, stacking money, having health, and then relationships. That like those are the three key elements, and everything else is downstream of that. So until those three ducks are in a row, and everything that's kind of downstream of those kind of three core tenets, then nothing else really matters, because that means your house is not in order yet. So for me, I view it like you fix your own house first before you do anything else. So that's kind of how I see that.
I just had this thought as you were kind of explaining that, and I think another small distinction in maybe the way I would word the concept you're outlining is that, like, your three pillars, if you will. For me, I would I would not label all three of those equal. I would say that health, and like that for me is in itself a three-layer thing: mind, body, spirit, right? Like, so getting right with self, I would put at the top. And then instead of like having three pillars, I have three dots, and like three dots or three corners as a triangle. So like that health, like body, mind, spirit, that's like the top of the pyramid. That's where, like, if you don't have that, like, you're not there yet. But like I believe that one of two ways that are absolutely essential in finding yourself there are the other two you talked about. Like, if you don't have the base two, like those two things, wealth and community, like if you don't have that strong foundation, it's hard to reach the peak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So for me, the way I kind of view the triangle would be, um the wealth piece is the least important of the three. You only want the wealth piece just to make the other two pieces easier, right? Because it's
Yeah.
hard when if you have to work 60 hours a week every week to keep your health up. It's hard to keep relationships up if you have to do that. So you ultimately want to get to a place where you have, either some type of passive income, or something to where just, the wealth aspects just, um you have that, but you can just put that on autopilot, so to speak, and then you can focus on health. And you need to focus on those simultaneously. If you're even if you don't have wealth yet, you still need to focus on health. But then ultimately, you get those two 100% right, then the most important element is, still relationships. But it's hard. It's very, very hard to do that without having those first two elements right.
That's
So
very interesting that you would say that, because I guess the only way that that would make sense to me is if you were trying to say that relationships are that important, if you are saying relationship with self, because I like the distinction I made earlier about the spiritual being what is all, right? If in like the kind of the Buddhist philosophy, it's like this, the idea of enlightenment, if you will. It's like this place where all of the physical things, and I guess a relationship is not necessarily a physical thing either. It is a vibrational thing. Like, you connect with people, and we need that. Um we are a social species. But I think if you don't have a strong sense of self and a strong um spiritual like grounding, like if you're rooted in like finding your success from outside sources, whether it be the wealth or whether it be from your community, then like in the most difficult times when it's just you haven't reached that pinnacle of like success where it's like I can be content with my situation in life without wealth and without community around. Because like if you find yourself in that strange predicament, the only way to get back to wealth and community is to like have a deep enough connection with self that you can work from there to rebuild the two that you've lost.
Totally 100% agree. So, and I think this is just kind of a verbiage distinction where we might have talked past each other a little bit, because I agree with everything you just said. You, by, I think, training the health, body, mind, spirit, by, training yourself in kind of what it takes to accrue wealth, you have to be grounded in yourself. So you don't even get to those first two realms unless you're 100% grounded in yourself. And to that point, one of the key elements of that, that I would just even expand upon what you just said, is that yeah, you can't get anywhere in life, whether it be wealth, health, relationships, if you're not 100% grounded in yourself first. One of the things is, no one, I've always said this to myself, no one can ever hurt me, right? Because being hurt's a choice. That, and I say that like, I don't take anybody's, exactly. So I don't take anybody's praises because or anybody's criticisms. To this extent I can help people, I'll do that. I'll take feedback on where to help people, but no one's going to be able to hurt me through their criticisms, because they can't hurt me through their praise, or they can't help me through their praises, because I'm grounded in everything I do every day. So I 100% agree with that. Though, like, before you even get to health, wealth, or relationships, you have to get the mind, body, spirit building working, because none of the other stuff even matters if you're not 100% grounded with yourself. If you care about other outside opinions or anything of that nature, then you've already lost. Like the thing is, every physical thing that I have in this world, or you have in this world, could be taken away tomorrow, right? Like all the material possessions, we don't know what's going to happen. But that's where like every day you have to be okay. You almost, I say this a lot, you kind of have to be ready to die. You have to be okay with what you've done every day, and just be ready to die, because you never know. A, we just don't know when it's going to come. So just practically, it's smart to be ready to die. But B, if you're not, then you're not going to approach life in such a way that you can win. So to win at life, you got to be ready to lose. And I mean, the ultimate losing, I guess, is in the physical realms, death. But to me, you have to be ready to die every day. And the key is, like I always tell people, I never have bad days, right? Because if I have a bad day, that means I've failed myself. Because that means that I let some external circumstance dictate how I was feeling, or something that caused me to have a bad day. So that means I let that happen. So like, whether it be someone else, whether it be, someone's cutting you off on the road, just like these kind of classic examples, if that affects you, if that affects me, then that's a personal weakness. So if I get hurt, it's because I'm weak. It has nothing to do with it. If someone else said something to me, even if it was technically offensive or bad, that's my fault, because I chose to get offended, or I chose to be hurt by that. So no one can ever affect me.
Yeah, okay. So I agree with a lot of what you said. And then towards the end, it's like what you say makes sense. And it makes sense easily up until a certain level of kind of degree in which something happens, right? And like I've had this conversation kind of recently on a tweet storm that happened on Twitter, and it was like this idea of like, oh, but have you ever had like the government come and like imprison you and like take literally everything from you? And it's like, because like if you can still be completely happy there, if you can like still be happy after like your mother is murdered in front of you, or your best friend, or your child, or like you like a level of degree higher than like somebody insults you on Twitter, right? Like there are places in the human life where it's going to become a lot more difficult to still say what you're saying and have it hold true. And like I understand that. And I responded on Twitter when somebody messaged. I was like, no, I haven't been put in that situation. And like, I hope I don't ever have to. But at the same time, like, I train for those types of scenarios as like much as I can. Like, I do fasting, not just because like it's a good physical practice, but because it's a mental discipline. To go 5 days without food, like once every 3 months, is like, if I suddenly find myself in a place where like I don't have access to food, I know I'm not going to die. Like, I will survive because I've pushed myself physically and mentally and spiritually through that situation before. I have not been in a prison cell, like being tortured, to like say that I will. So okay, with what you're describing, this again brings me back to that distinction between hatred and love and like, once you find that distinction, then there's a giant distinction as well between love and like. And like, I wouldn't like being in a cell being tortured. I would try my absolute best to still love, because the only other option is to hate, and hate to me is death. Like, to hate life is essentially 100% ego based, and like, you're giving up this present moment, which is a great moment to be here, because it's the only moment that you can be in. You don't have another option. Like, if you don't want to be here, the only other option is to not be here. And that's hate, that's ego. So like, look, again, I don't want to be tortured in a cell. I think the most salient connection I have to like where this discipline was difficult to apply in my own life is when I was going through yoga teacher training. Just is where in my life I really started to kind of find peace for some of my ailments after Afghanistan. And I was really struggling one day after class, and I was just me and my teacher. Everyone else had gone home, and I just kind of broke down and I started crying. And the thought on my mind at that moment in time was like, how can I possibly love? How can I forgive a group of people who murdered my friends and family without like dishonoring the memory of the people I fought next to in Afghanistan? And in that moment, my yoga teacher asked me a question that was just incredibly powerful. And that question changed my life forever. And it was, is this hatred, is this guilt, is this anger, is all of this that you carry what your friends would want for you? Like, is the honor of their memory weighing you down what they would want? And with time, it was a powerful question immediately, but with enough time, that question really took hold in my life, and the answer was obviously no. Like, that's not what they would want from me. So I try my best to be present. I try my best to love the moment I'm in. I try the best to love the people around me. And like, I don't always like things, but there's a distinction there. There's a distinction between, like, you can say whatever the fuck you want to me. You can call me a bitch. You can, whatever, dude. Like, it doesn't faze me, because what I am is deeper than my mind or my physical body. So yeah, I like, that was a roundabout way to say I agree with what you're talking about.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, me and you have a really similar perspective, just slightly maybe nuanced difference here and there. But the idea is, the broad idea is that um, nothing in the outside realm can affect you, right? Because ultimately, you just got to be stronger than that. Especially like as men, if we're expected to be providers, go off and fight, do all these things, and say someone insults us, and then one of us were to get offended, that would just, like, how can we provide for a family, a village, do all these things, go off and be warriors, if we can get mad when somebody says something, whether it's true or not, right? Like, you have to be able to take anything that's, especially that's said about you, in stride. And obviously, look, if you're being tortured in a prison cell, it's a different thing. Like, like I don't have a frame of reference for that, so I can't say what I would
Right.
do there. But
Same.
just with how mentally weak, like everybody in the West is, we at least have to be stronger than that, right? We can't like succumb to that level of weakness at least.
10% tougher than the liberal snowflakes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and really just everybody, because to me
Yeah.
the entire West is just completely lost in that way. Outside of just if you go outside of kind of like our space, kind of like the Bitcoin space, there's like the broader self improvement or the bodybuilding space, but like outside like that, people are so mentally weak, and just across every other realm, it's honestly just sad.
I
And
think I think there's I don't 100% disagree with that, but I also find, and I know you didn't necessarily use a blanket statement there, but like large scale like statements tend to not work, and I would agree that, or I would say that that's true with what you're saying as well. It's like I definitely agree. I mean, I would say even within the Bitcoin Twitter space, there's plenty of Bitcoin Twitter people that don't, or they just don't. They're not mentally and physically and spiritually prepared for what could lie ahead. And I think that's true across all kind of ways that you could classify or organize people. So to say that it's like there aren't weak-minded people within in Bitcoin, and to say that there aren't strong-minded, disciplined people inside of like veganism and I like Democratic voters. I don't know, just pick a group of people, right? I think it's impossible to group everybody into one thing and say that they're all this way or they're all not this way. So and 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 with that being said, I would say that I am still optimistic that more and more people are finding healthier ways forward and like more discipline. And I again, I believe that because I wake up every single day and do my best to try and spread that into the world. So I know that it's happening because I'm actively working on it, and like and to wallow in the fact that it's all broken and that like all everybody's too weak and they're not going to make it, like that's giving up on me and my mission as well. So it's like I'm not ready to do that, and I'm not willing to do that because I know that I can change things by actively working on it.
Oh, totally. It's a great point. You don't we don't want to pigeonhole people, and to that point, like even if you look in the Bitcoin space, there's a lot of weak people. They're like mentally weak people. You can tell. Unfortunately, there just is, because you know if you challenge them on something, they also don't like having their ideas challenged. So like when you challenge them on something outside of their specific area of expertise, they'll get really defensive. And getting defensive is weak, right? Like that's weakness. So yeah, like the blanket statements obviously don't work, right? Like they're like when we pigeonhole people by groups, it never turns out well. So um to me, the just within the in the Bitcoin space, it's there's weakness, and me or you, whoever else, needs to do our best to get rid of that weakness in the space. But yeah, like I'm definitely in agreement with you that we got to get rid of the weakness.
Yeah, and again, I think this all ties back into the entire theme of this show. So I know you said you were short on time this evening with things that were going on, so I don't want to hold you up too late, but I would say that's kind of a good place to kind of sum up what we're talking about in this episode, because at the end of the day, as we've discussed along the road in this conversation, is that like that weakness that we're seeing, like I have to accept that that's weakness here, and like the only way to fix it is to fix my own weaknesses and continue to attack my own goals 100%. And like I can't worry about someone else's weaknesses. Like I can't fix someone else's problems. I can only fix my own. And in so doing, like that physical like representation ripples out into the energy space that helps everyone else.
I totally agree. You have to fix yourself first, and that's got to be the singular point of origin on which everything else rests.
Yeah. Hey man, I think that's gonna be it for this episode. Dude, I feel like we could do this for another hour, hour and a half. Maybe we'll have to get together for a second episode somewhere down the road.
Let's definitely do it. Well, I appreciate you having me on, Kyle.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining me. Till next time.
Awesome. Take care.
Later.